we've hit an hour, and I don't want to take more than an hour of your time, but I am going to ask if you guys are willing to come back at some point, either together or separately. I know Derek had talked about wanting not to be here with Nick because I know there's some
separately.
things he wanted to say about Nick.
Yeah.
And I've been reading the chat that you've been typing in. Yeah, I agree with about 90% of that. But he'll learn as he gets older. Anyway, this has been so great, you guys chatting with us. Jim, do you have any other final wrap-up questions for our guys?
I really don't. I will say that I saw Mac King's act only once, and I loved every second of it. But there was a moment where he scared a kid. He brought a kid up on stage, and it was so funny to me that I thought I was going to have to leave because I couldn't stop. I just couldn't stop laughing. I just couldn't get by it. And we were 10 minutes by it, and I was covering up like this with my buddies because it was so hilarious to me. And he stands around after the show and signs stuff. So I bought something and made him sign it. And then I with tears in my eyes, I said, that thing. And he said, "Oh, did you like that?" And I said, "My God, it may be the funniest thing I've ever seen." And he said, "Oh, I'm so happy to hear you say that. I had that idea for about a year and I was afraid of it. And now I've only been doing it about a month and I'm not sure I'm going to keep it." And I said,
"That's hilarious.
You've got to keep it because it's so out there because he's such a warm, kind of nice, harmless guy. And to scare a kid, it was beyond the beyond for me. And so when I think of him, that's the only thing I think of is him scaring that kid. And
it's his love. It's his love that lets him get away with that.
Right.
Exactly.
They know it's out of warmth that he would do that to the kid.
Climbs up. I think the kid climbed up Mac King. It was just like,
he's had him cry. He's had them collapsing a ball on the ground. He's had them run out. He's had him run back and has to go backstage and get the kid back. Like he's got some great stories about it. If you ever have him on, it
would be nice to have him on. But yeah, that right there, for me, is how far you can go if you get an audience to love you the way you guys get an audience to come along and love you. Then what can I get away with? I can terrify a child right in front of you, and it's going to be okay.
Yeah,
that right there is a master class for me. It's something I couldn't. I still chuckle about it. In fact, the guys I went to that show with, we will still say to each other, "Are you scared?" "You're gonna be." Just because it was just too much for me. I couldn't believe it. So yeah. It's great.
All right, guys, thank you so much for taking the time. It's great to see you both too.
Yeah, God bless
Likewise.
you. Thank you both very much. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
See you guys.
Take care.
See
ya.
Oh, Jimmy.
How about that, huh?
I'm not leaving.
I'm never leaving.
Hey, guys, are you still there?
I got time. I hit paid break on my phone, and I'm off.
I'm so used to just doing the hour cutoff because normally, like when we had Dick Cavett on, his wife was very sweet, said, let's keep it to an hour because he's 82 years old and he took a nap that morning to be on with us. And with him, we ended, in fact, this is how it'll end. He's going to be a two-parter on the podcast where I thank him. Normally I don't leave that stuff in, but I thank him. And I said, it's just been great. And he says, I'll come back anytime. And we both start laughing and said, don't say that because I have your number now. I will call you again. So I'm so used to just cutting off at an hour that.
Derek, that was one of the last things Eugene Berger said to me. I was driving him to the airport after he had done Sunday Night Magic. And I said, I got out of the car and I said, Eugene, I'm so grateful for everything that you've done for me over the years, but particularly for this, that you would come to Minnesota and do this goofy little thing that I'm working on at your level. I'm just so grateful. And he said, "Oh, I had a wonderful time. I'd come back if you ever wanted me to." And a month later, the man was dead. So I always.
And that's incredible because he knows that he's dying.
Yeah.
Right. He knew it. I know he knew it.
And but he meant it, that he would
Yeah.
come back.
Yeah. Yeah. So
The coolest.
good man. Can I ask a question as long as you're both still here?
Yeah.
Uh, Derek DelGaudio. I watched that show on the
Hulu.
on the TV and was in tears by the end of it. I mean, just so completely. There it is. Okay.
Yeah.
The show?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that one. I
It's real
was
good.
completely blown away by what he did, how he did it, and the emotional punch of that ending as he goes into the audience and identifies. I just couldn't. I mean, it was just a completely what the fuck is going on emotionally. I could after the fact go, okay, if I was going to try to figure that out, I guess I could. Oh, maybe if you tore the ticket and that they if there was somebody and he had a headset, you could sort of figure it out. But the emotional wallop of that ending, it's like a religious experience almost. It's
Well, it's a theatrical one, right?
yeah.
It's
I mean,
theater.
But the I still haven't processed it completely
Oh,
because I'm
nice.
still
Nice.
I'm still kind of thinking it through, going, what did he set out to do to get to that? How do you get to, I mean, what's your where do you how do you conceive of that? Because it's just so different than
Well,
anything.
it's funny you say that, Jim. Derek and I were on a 2-hour Zoom last night talking about this very thing. And his journey, began with a vision, the young Derek DelGaudio seeing Ricky Jay's 52 Assistants.
Oh.
And so just, Elvis and Dracula. He wanted to be Ricky Jay, but himself. And his journey is about identity because of he talks about it in the show, right? His mother and so just exploring the idea of identity and knowing that he wanted to be Ricky Jay like, but so for instance, he said this, like he was inspired by Ricky Jay, but Ricky Jay would take Erdnase and memorize it and recite Erdnase. And he would talk in 52 Assistants. He's talking about the history of magic. So it's not his stuff. Ricky Jay is sort of regurgitating other things. So Derek said, okay, so I'm not gonna do anybody else's material stuff. I'm not gonna rehash history, but I still want to have that kind of voice that I saw that guy command in a respected, elevated space. He wanted to elevate magic, Well, and he refused to do, like Louis Anderson, he refuses to do anything that doesn't fulfill that mission. I would call him in LA, before he had any show and say, hey, I got a walk around gig tonight, $1,500. Are you available? And he's like, no. And I'm like, oh, you're busy? And he's like, well, no. And I'm like, oh, you're flush? And he's like, no. And I'm like, well, what's the problem? Because he's great, And he's like, I just hate how that makes me feel. So
Sure.
He's an artist that's been very committed to sticking with a search for truth, in the very long term, that show emerged over a very long period of time. And look at the effect it has, though. It's like,
and I'm not a genius at all, but I am a journeyman. So I can look at something and go, that's, okay, or it was brilliant. I watched it and I,
wonderful.
As they say, talent will always recognize genius. And certainly as I'm watching that, I'm thinking, this man's a genius. however he's achieved, it doesn't matter to me. The method is immaterial at this point. It's the emotional wallop that this thing packs, even at the distance that I'm at. I'm by myself in my house watching this with tears coming down my eyes, you know?
And you know what's interesting too? You talk about like, Nick, you and I, like, we do feel this onus to keep the pace, keep the energy, and crescendo to a, right?
Sure.
And Derek, that show is paced. It's not a clip, you know, it's,
Right.
he is conditioning through those stories and effects and some of the thoughts and leaving time to linger in a thought any which way, leaving things open-ended. This book that he gives to an audience member and kicks them out.
Right.
That's, you know, all this leads to
Yeah.
and
It's
to trust that is, I mean, he's got balls, man.
I was actually glad to see it on TV and not be there because it was so emotional at the end. I thought I like having this removed because it to have the idea of being there in the audience and going through that would have like, wow, that's intense. And I think it's because partially because each person chose the word, and that makes it much stronger than if you were handed something as you came in.
right.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I would
stuff.
turn down seeing it live. I'm just saying.
No, I'd go in a minute. But my question became, you know, I watched it and I've been thinking about it and processing it and rethinking about it. And, you know, I got to the point with it now where I thought, I wonder what the heck he could do next. I don't, where is it? Is he going to, you know, is this an Orson Welles situation where he was like, that's as brilliant as anything I've ever seen in my life. Now what?
Well, here's the answer that he said last night. You know, he kind of, did you see Free Solo?
No.
So that's a movie you got to watch about a rock climber who free solos El Capitan.
Wow.
No ropes. He climbs the hardest climb. He's insane and a master. And Derek was like, that movie, that's how I feel. Like this whole journey leading up to this moment and the release of this film, that's my El Capitan. Like I knew I needed to climb this mountain. I didn't necessarily want to climb this mountain. I reluctantly dove in and committed to climbing this mountain. I have climbed the mountain. And he doesn't quite know what's next. I'll tell you though, he did write a book that is now he's doing press for. Penguin released, it's called A Moral Man. That's one word. And that's coming out, and it's kind of it's a prequel to the in and of itself story show.
Well, I would read and or see anything the man puts out because it was just what the did I just watch?
Well, I will if you can buy the book, or I can loan you a copy when I finish it.
I'll buy it and support him because people like you and him and Matt King, I want to give them my money. I'm happy to give them my money.
Yeah,
they're doing something.
I'm curious to see what he does next because he, like I say, he has refused to do anything that isn't exactly how he wants it to be. And as an artist, you think, well, you can't do that. You got to pay your dues. You got to blah, 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 blah.
You got to pay your bills.
And this is a guy who said that I'm going to emerge fully formed.
Yeah.
With Frank Oz as my director and Neil Patrick Harris as my producer and Mike Mothersbaugh as my musician. And it's like, what the
Yeah.
How did you do that? You know, I thought you say yes and you take the corporate gig and that finances a little art, you know, a midnight showcase at the Southern, you know.
Right. The way
he's like, no, you go to Broadway. Like, oh God.
Well, it was a delight and fun just chatting with people about it because I really am, you know, so my wife fell asleep. It just wasn't her thing, you know. So
and
there I am
people
by myself like this, and my wife is because it just wasn't her thing. But to me, it was like transcendent. It was a religious experience.
I love hearing that, man. I'll tell you, I'm getting some love. You know, he gave me a nice thank you in the credits, so I'm getting some calls from people like, and I'm happy to be associated. Years from now, I might put that on my resume. You know, like,
Right.
you know, I got a special thanks.
Remember Hulu? You remember Hulu?
All right, I'm going to actually shut this down now because
Uh-oh.
I got to take the dog for a walk.
Sounds good. Great seeing you guys.
God
Great to
bless
see
you,
you.
fellas. Thank you.
All
It
right,
was
thank you so much.
fun. So
Let's-
much fun.
Hope you see
Hey, before you
soon
shut us
again.
down, John, Nick, how long are you in Chicago?
A few months, probably. Just hanging out.
Okay, let's connect.
Please, absolutely.
Okay.
Take care,
All right,
everybody.
catch you guys later. See ya.
Bye-bye.